good time. So, all right. I'm doing a review today. We've been doing a lot of conversation, around this idea of social emotional learning. And I did a talk a few weeks ago that ended up being very interactive, very surprisingly. People had lots of questions and lots of things they wanted to say. So I thought we would incorporate that into our service today as we do the review and see if there are any questions that people would like to ask, or if they want to interject anything, we're welcome to do that. So we'll have runners and we'll have mics, and if you want to ask questions as we go along, you will be welcome to do that. So some of you know I was out of town this week. I left Sunday right after service and flew to Seattle. Got in at about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and the hotel was a very interesting experience. Thank God the next one was much nicer. No black widow spiders, running water, toilet that flushed. What's going on? And so it was a wonderful, wonderful time, and I'll be sharing some of what I learned in Seattle. It was a Ministers Leadership Conference. It was a lot of fun. I'll be sharing most of it with our Leadership Council here. And then Shanna asked me, so did anything happen in your travels? Because there's always seems to be something that happens, and I dig for the meaning. I haven't found the meaning of this one yet, so maybe some of you can help me. Because as we were getting ready to come home, in the airplane, sitting on the plane, getting ready to take off, the captain says, well, it looks like we will be staying here for a little bit. We're not going anywhere because the airport is now shut down. I thought, what? So apparently someone stole an airplane. Someone stole an airplane, and the tower and the jets that were accompanying him or something were trying to get him to land back at the airport, so they weren't letting anyone leave. Everything got shut down. It was very interesting. At first I thought he was kidding, like, that's not a funny joke. You know, we have places to go, we have things to do. And then I realized it was in fact for real. As I started text messaging family and see, can you find this story on CNN and let me know if this is for real? It was for real. But like I said, I still haven't come up with the deep metaphysical message of that. All I know is that the delay was only an hour and a half, and I was very grateful for that. That it didn't last the whole day. So interesting. I used my social emotional learning and my social emotional intelligence to not let myself get too worked up. And remember, there are things that are in our control, and there are things that are not. And that's part of that learning and that intelligence, is knowing what's in your control. Can I do something about this? Well, great. If I can do something about it, then I do it. And if I can't, just let it be what it is. Yes. Right? Maybe that was the lesson. Yeah. Maybe that was it. So yes, every single day we make a choice. I love this little picture. I've used it a lot of times. You have someone having the same experience, essentially. Mm-hmm. And one person is going to look at one side of it, and the other person is going to look at the other. We all have that option every day. Every day. I had that option in the airport. I thought I could get worked up, I could get upset, I could start calling people, jump up and down, scream, shout. It wouldn't have done any good whatsoever. So you just roll with it. You just roll with it. So yes, every single day we make a choice. And that's what this whole thing, I believe, of social emotional learning is really about. So we started with a definition of social and emotional intelligence. And what it means, emotional intelligence, really the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions. The social piece comes out of it. It's the ability to recognize, understand, and influence other people's. So it's all about how we show up in our relationships and how we influence others and how we allow them to influence us. It really is a big part, probably one of the most important parts of our lives, which is why we spent so much time on this topic. Eric Butterworth, a great New Thought teacher, I think he comes out of the Unity tradition, said, your most important asset is the conscious control of your own life. Mm-hmm. Nothing else can satisfy or fulfill unless you enjoy the freedom that comes from control of your inner world of mind and emotions. Because that is where your life is happening, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's in your own awareness, it's in your own thought. So it behooves us to understand how to work with that energy and understanding, that consciousness. We talked about a book called Power versus Force. Do y'all remember that? How many remember Power versus Force? Okay. It says emotions are the GPS of the soul. First thing, I think I missed a slide in here. It was really hard to take from 2.5 months worth of stuff to pick and choose the things that I thought were really important to speak about. So this idea of emotion, and I think it's really easy to remember this way, is that emotion is really energy in motion. And like things that are meant to move, when they stop and stagnate is when there's a problem. Think about the water in a swimming pool, for example. If it's not running through the filter, it's not moving, what happens to it?
It's green.
It gets green, it stagnates, it gets nasty. It needs to be moving. Water needs to flow, and our emotions need to flow. The problem is that we tell ourselves that some emotions are acceptable and some are not. So the things that we tell ourselves are not acceptable tend to get stuck in places, and we can get stuck anywhere on this scale. Power versus Force came from a book written by David Hawkins. He is an MD, a PhD, and what he did was basically calibrate the emotions of human beings. So we know, energetically, you know that different feelings feel different in your body. The lowest emotion, the worst thing that anybody can feel, has got to be shame. Think about that. Everything from shame is going up. Right? Shame is the worst thing that we can feel. And there are people who come in at a certain level, that log, there's a logarithmic scale there. And what Hawkins says is that people tend to come in one place and they tend to stay there for most of their lives until they get some kind of awakening or they deliberately get on a spiritual path. You may move a little bit, but most people stay stuck in one place until they become conscious and aware that they can change that. So our goal, of course, is to not be in any of those lower levels. It starts with shame, and then it moves on up to guilt. I don't know how much you can see. But we go shame, guilt, apathy, grief. From there we move to fear. Can you feel how those start to move up a little bit? Desire, anger, pride. Between pride and courage seems to be the tipping point. When people can finally have the courage to step up, step forward, and start to do those things that are on the edge of their comfort zone. It kind of kicks you into a new level of expression and moving you from this place of force and feeling like you have to make things happen to really owning and being able to step into your own power. So the tipping point is between pride and courage. Now we might think pride is a great thing, and pride can be a really wonderful thing, especially for someone who's lived in shame and despair and guilt. To finally get to a place where you can feel proud about yourself, to feel proud about something, is really a wonderful thing. But think about the difference between, I am so proud to be an American, which is a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yes.
But how about we say instead, I am so blessed to live in this country. I'm so grateful to be an American. Do you feel the difference between that? So the vibration of gratitude is higher than the vibration of pride. So the idea, our emotions are our GPS. It's like your inner guidance system that tells you where you are on the scale. Who wants to be moving up on the scale? Anybody else? That's what we're all looking to do, isn't it? So the idea is that when you start to feel something in your system, you start to feel a certain kind of way. Maybe you're feeling angry about something. Now, are you angry? Have you plummeted down from a place of love and joy, and maybe somebody pulls out in front of you in traffic and all of a sudden you're in anger? That's kind of going the wrong way. Would you agree?
Yes.
Now, for some of us, anger is heading on up. It's heading up. If anyone has ever suffered with depression or sadness, I had a time in my life where I was feeling very, just like everything kind of falling in on me. I've talked about this a lot of times. And a feeling of shame and despair and sadness. And then I was introduced. She said anger and sadness are really flip sides of the same coin. that most of us are feeling both of them at the same time, but because of how we're socialized and what society tells you, like big boys don't cry, you know, girls who are angry, who express that anger, are called bad names. You know what I'm talking about? Right? So it seems like it's more acceptable for women to be in that sadness. It's more acceptable for men to be in anger. And so you may be in a relationship, or you may see relationships where, I'm just going to be very generalized, where the wife, for example, does all of the sadness and the husband does all of the anger. And there is balance in that relationship, but there's not necessarily balance in the individuals. The idea is that we all need to own our own feelings, our own anger, our own sadness, and be able to have balance within ourselves. So when you're feeling that sadness and you're in that place of grief, the element that goes with that is what? Water, right? Tears, water. Now on the flip side of that, what's anger? Fire. So when you're wallowing, when you're in that place of sadness and a lot of water, right, depression, you can drown in that. What needs to happen is maybe you need to get fired up. Burn up some of that water, burn up some of that sadness, and then you're moving up the scale from depression and sadness up into anger. Now the opposite is true as well. When somebody gets into that place of rage, it's not that they're necessarily too angry. It may be that they've not allowed themselves to feel their sadness. And you need a little water to dampen that fire. So we want to all have that balance within us, the balance of anger and sadness, to be able to maximize our lives and to use our emotions to their fullest, not to get used by them. Does that make sense? Okay. So this author, I forget the name of the book, but it had something to do, it was very similar to the title there. If our eyes are the windows of our soul, then our emotions are the voice of the soul. It's your soul telling you, this is where I am. Either this feels really good, or this doesn't feel so good. We need to move to something else. But allowing ourselves to feel and to really recognize where we are is vital. So be thinking about questions if you have anything, or if you want to ask something while we're in the middle of it. This is really review, and I'm trying to go through kind of fast. So questions? Comments? All right. That was a revelation for me, by the way, the anger sadness thing. So I know I've shared it in here a lot. Maybe it's not a revelation for you anymore, but for me it was huge. The next thing we talked about was the idea that we are responsible for the energy that we give and the energy we receive. Everyone knows that we can change a room just by walking into it. Right? There are people, you know, people whose presence changes a room. You know, oh, so-and-so has arrived. They're here, and it shifts the whole energy of the room. Right, some of you are those people, yes? So we are responsible not just for the energy that we bring when we enter a space, because as I've said many times, everyone can bring joy to a room. Some people bring it when they enter, and for some the joy is when they leave. We're all responsible for that, for ourselves, for what we bring. But not only are we responsible for what we bring to this space, we're responsible for what we allow into our awareness, yes, into our consciousness. Absolutely. Deepak Chopra said this, some variation of this. As the body metabolizes food, our awareness, aka our consciousness, energetically metabolizes our experiences, turning thoughts, feelings, and actions into biochemical messages. Isn't that fascinating? That blew my mind. That was another thing that I had never heard said in quite that way. But if you think about it, all of the input, all of the things that are coming into your mind become biochemical messages. Your brain is sending first electrical messages that turn into biochemical messages that then have an effect on your body. So your thoughts can literally make you fat. Make you well. Yes. It's what you're allowing into your experience. So if you're sitting there and your TV is on and it's on one of the news stations, because you've got to be informed all the time about everything that's going on, think about what that is doing to your psyche. What is that doing to you? Your mind, your physical body, all of you is having a reaction to that. So be very careful what you put into what you allow into your consciousness. Whether it's the scary movies or it's the bad news or whatever it is having an effect on you. It's having an effect on all of us. This is why this has become such a timely topic, important thing to talk about. Any comments, questions about this one?
Actually, I have a comment on that one. Could that explain why, as you start becoming more aware of how you're feeling about things, when certain things come on TV before you've even gotten through the program, you want to change the program?
I know that happens for me. I don't know if it happens for anyone else. I'm seeing yes all the time.
I was trying to find, when you called about the airport situation, I was just turning on the news to see if I could find a national story about it. And so I had to watch CNN for a few minutes and nothing came up. And then I watched Fox for a few minutes and nothing came up. But I had to sit through 10 minutes of what was on the program, trying to get to what in it. I was feeling physically sick on both stations. Just with the negative, they were bringing back up things that happened a year ago and rehashing that pain, and it was to me just so unnecessary to go backwards a year. And I couldn't watch it any longer. It was making me physically ill to watch both of them. So it really can, if you do it day in, day out, either way, you can really get yourself sick.
And I believe the more we get in touch with our feelings and what is our optimal state, that when you get out of it, you realize it faster. Right? You're not as willing to wallow in the negativity and the pain for as long, because you know it's not necessary. You realize it's not necessary. So I think that's just a fascinating thing, that your thoughts, that your experience metabolizes. Yes. Let's wait for the mic to come, because we're
What do you think makes so many people addicted to those shows about murder ID and all those crime shows? What causes that? What is it in our nature that makes us want to watch that? I know a lot of people do.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think you answered it almost in your question, was what makes us addicted. How many of us are addicted to different things that we know don't serve us? Right? Whether it's food, whether it's some kind of substance, we do. It's just what we're used to doing. It becomes the norm. I wonder if that isn't a piece of it.
Something dark instead of something light. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And let me see what I can answer about that. And if any of you has an answer,
I have a statement on that one. I can tell y'all, this is admission, I love Live PD. I like watching them because I like finding the happy. I like the fact that it shows a side that a lot of people don't get to see when an officer or a person is doing something good for someone else. Those moments of, oh my gosh, look, there's a happy moment that needs to go viral instead of all these other things. That's why I like watching it, because I want to see the happy. I want to see the good that's out there.
I think maybe it gives us contrast. You look at your life and it's in whatever state it's in, and to see somebody else who's maybe going through a little something rougher, it reminds you of your own blessings. And maybe that's part of why we go through the dramas and traumas we go through, so that we can really appreciate the good times when they are here. Just a thought. We had another question here.
Excuse me. Hi, everyone. I think perhaps building on the last two ideas that were expressed by the audience, we might be able to find that even some of the more horrible TV shows that might have a dark demeanor on the outside do have sort of a glimmer of hope on the inside, because, yeah, they got murdered, but we still got people coming after them, trying to figure out how it happened, how we can stop it, how we can keep it from happening to the next guy. So maybe that's what they're searching for in their own lives. Maybe a preventative measure of some sort. Maybe some sort of investigation into what actually happened.
Sure.
Justice. Ooh, justice. That's a good one.
Over here.
Another question?
I want to talk about the plane situation. I'm a retired pilot, and that was an amazing story. That 29-year-old man had no history of criminal. He was a family guy. He was a 3-year mechanic for Horizon Air. No inkling of any problems. And he took that airplane and did some things. I have to tell you, they filmed it. He was looping it and rolling it, and he'd never flown an airplane. And then he was talking to the air traffic controllers in a real nice way and said, look, you know, I'm just going to finish this off. I'm going to do a loop, and I'm going to come out of it, and we're going to call it a night. And that's how he took himself out. So here's the thing. He was living on the edge. All signs of any trouble, they were hidden. But he snapped. He wasn't angry with people. He just took himself out. So I think I just wanted to observe the fact that some of us live like that on the edge, and we need to be sort of like sensitive to it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Mark. That's a really important thing in this whole social emotional learning thing is realizing that everyone is going through their own traumas and to have empathy for that, because you never know where somebody is in your life journey. Imagine if we all had those little thought bubbles over our head. This person didn't get any sleep last night, or this one is worried about losing their job, or this one is on the verge of divorce, or this one just got a diagnosis. I mean, I think we would treat people with a little more loving care if we knew those things. People were going through those things. Yes, Susan.
I believe in the soul agreement, that we choose our life, we choose our lessons before we manifest onto the physical plane. And a lot of times when I see these terrible things that happen in the news, months down the road, this story will come back. And the loved ones of the tragedy will say, you know, I have learned these terrific lessons, or now I have started a foundation to help other survivors. Now I'm, I've started some kind of a fundraising program that will, help a counseling center. You know, there is good that comes from the bad. And I think a lot of us have chosen those things. Some of us have chosen actually to be what we call victims, because our life will spur somebody into their greater awareness. And through that individual will help many, many other people.
Yes, thank you. That's a wonderful insight. And it actually goes along really well with some other stuff that we talked about. She covered it? All right. So the social brain, I think this is also a fascinating thing to talk about, how we're responsible not just for what we put out, but for what we allow into our awareness. And I think this was from that Sunday where people had lots of questions and lots of comments and thoughts. The social brain represents the only biological system in our bodies that continually attunes us to and in turn becomes influenced by the internal state of the people we are with. Do I need to read that one again? Can you take that in? Right? Our social brain is the only biological system that gets influenced by other people, by being in the realm of other people. And there's a reason this happens. Physiologically speaking, there is something in our brain called mirror neurons. And mirror neurons are a type of brain cell that responds equally whether we're performing an action or if we're watching somebody else do something. And scientists believe that this is what may be at the basis of empathy, of things like autism, of how we learn language, and any number of things. And I love that picture with the father and the baby, because they're making that same face. I've got my 2 grandbabies, and we just have the best time with these babies doing things and saying things and making faces and things that they copy. And they're not thinking necessarily about doing it. It's just kind of what we do. It's part of our hard wiring. One cry, they all cry. Baby cries in the nursery, they all start crying. It happens to me even. I'm looking out here and I see somebody start crying and I feel it starting to well up in here. You know, it's not on purpose, it just happens. And for some of us, I believe some of us naturally, like some of us have talent for music, or we may have spatial understanding, that some of us are more wired to feel other people's feelings and emotions. And so you can see someone crying, you can see someone else in pain, and it becomes yours. Yes?
Do you think that we are all equally affected the same way in this contagion? Like my uncle, for example, he had a problem whenever somebody yawned. It didn't matter if he was tired or not. If he saw you fake yawn, he'd have to yawn.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would mess with him all the time. But do you think that that works in the same with all of the emotional plane for each of us? Or is that a skill set that we can actually build upon and try to grow that like we could grow a muscle?
I would say the latter, your second, what you said, that it is something that's, again, some of us may have naturally, may come a little bit easier, but this social emotional learning is something that we can cultivate. It can be taught and it can be learned. You can get better at it.
Well, he could never stop yawning.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the yawning.
I want to tack on real quick to the learning part of that. You're right, and I am proof of that, because when I was growing up, I used to get in trouble because the look on my face would not match what my insides were feeling. And so it would confuse my parents all the time, thinking I was either mad or upset or frustrated or apathetic, when in truth I was still trying to learn, even as a teenager, how to react in certain situations. So it definitely is a learned thing. I know that firsthand.
Yes. We can learn for ourselves, and we can, as we come to understand ourselves better, we understand other people better as well. Then Seth Godin said this: the emotions are far more contagious than any disease. A smile or panic will spread through a group of people faster than any virus ever could.
Absolutely.
You all know that's true too, don't you? It's very, very easy. So again, being responsible, just being aware that we can change these things for ourselves can make a difference. Emotional contagion does more than spread feelings. It automatically prepares the brain for appropriate action. What might that action be? Well, to feel with stirs us to act for. Right? If we feel with somebody, we're going to act on their behalf. The primal brain-to-brain link makes us experience another's suffering as our own and to prepare to help. The more we feel with another person, the more we want to help them. So it really is the basis for empathy. Because we are social creatures. For as much as we like to think we're all independent, especially here in the United States, I did it all myself. I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps, didn't need anybody.
No, you did not.
You did not. None of us ever did. None of us ever will.
Absolutely.
None of us ever will. Go out there and live in the woods and see if you can figure out how to make your own clothing. By the way, you don't get fabric because you have to create. You'll have to create the thread. And there's so many things that we take for granted that we think, well, I did it. But no, you didn't. You're driving on roads that were created by other people. You're living in buildings that were built by people that came before you, that had to design it. I mean, if you can take any one thing, this is a great exercise actually to do, is to follow your day from the moment you open your eyes and just start to give thanks for all of the things. Just even laying in the bed. Someone made the mattress, someone came up with the design for the mattress, for the bed, for every bit of cloth you have on there, for your pillow. You can take anything, sit down and eat a salad. Well, think about who grew the vegetables, think about who had to pick them, think about who put them on the truck, who took them to the grocery store, who then packaged them, the cashier who checked you out. I mean, there's in any little small activity, just think of the hundreds, if not thousands of hands of people that had to be involved in that to get you here. And you may think, I just did it all by myself.
And I think that's a great exercise. We had in one of the classes.
Can you give her a mic?
Yes. I have a big mouth. But I think that's a great exercise. In one of the classes that I took many years ago, we had a book. And you wrote down every single thing that you thought about during the course of the day that somebody else did for you, that you had nothing to do. And if they hadn't done it, you could not be doing what you're doing now. So it is a time to make you think and to understand that we are social creatures and we need one another, and we need to recognize that. I think that's an important thing that all of this teaching is about. We need one another. We are social creatures.
Yes, absolutely. And another thing on that makes me think about this idea that so many of us, you know, everything's available online. You can find anything you want. I thank you all for being here in person on a Sunday morning, because you could stay at home and watch Oprah Super Soul Sunday.
Yes.
And listen to the best speakers there are and get a wonderful message. But it's different when you're in a community.
Oh, absolutely.
When you plug in with other people, there's something about that shared energy that makes a difference for us, because we have that longing to share our gifts and be with other people. Yes.
I would like to comment on empathy and compassion. Empathy is a very good social skill and a very high humanistic value that helps all of us live together by understanding one another. But our ultimate goal and one of our highest social functions is to have compassion. And when we have compassion, we not only understand that person, but we hurt with that person, and we care about what happens to that person. So as spiritual people, that's the value we're looking for, and empathy is a skill that underlies this high spiritual function.
Thank you. Beautifully said. Yes. All right. Every man is a doorway through which the infinite passes into the finite, through which God becomes man, through which the universal becomes the individual. Each one of us, this is our belief, that we are each the hands and feet, the voice, the eyes, the ears of God itself. And this is what we're here to do. We're here to express that. We're here to be that. To be that compassion. To be that love. Not for anyone else to do it, but for each one of us to do it. So be a possibilitarian. There was a whole talk around that. Talked about how we have these one-word names for all these other denominations that are awesome, and I love Unity the best. I think that's just the best name there is. It's not ours. We are instead Centers for Spiritual Living, where we teach the science of mind, aka religious science. And by the way, we're not a cult.
Yes.
Underscore that. But if we could have one name, if we could have a one-word name, I think it would be to be possibilitarians. To be the possibility, to share possibility, to look at things and not say, why is it like this? Why does it have to be like this? Well, guess what? It doesn't have to be. Let's see the greater possibility for this. Let's see how we can become more joyous, how we can share our love and compassion. Show something better than what we're seeing. That's why I think our time is so important, this time that we are living in now, is so that we can be that voice of possibility. And then the last piece of this, I talked about our motivation. What makes people do the things they do? What is the core? What is at our core? You know, I talked about how we are each like that seed, and how every seed has exactly what it needs for its own manifestation, right? In potential, at least. Right? An apple tree has everything it needs. An apple seed has everything it needs to become an apple tree, which then can produce an infinite number of other apple trees, yes? If you think about that, each seed can become another tree, which then has multiple apples on it, which have seeds within them that can become other trees, and so on and so on. We all have these possibilities within us. And there is a universal urge that is to express what we came here to express. And that's what this part was about. We live in a world of breathtaking material plenty. This has freed hundreds of millions of people from the day-to-day struggles and liberated us to pursue more significant desires. Things like purpose, transcendence, and spiritual fulfillment. We're not running from the saber-toothed tigers anymore. We're not running from, we're not stuck in that survival mode so much. So now we have time to look at the other things of life, the things that are deeper and more meaningful. Yes, there's a question.
I don't think that that's what's happening. I mean, you know, I grew up in a very lower middle income family, and then I watched these programs on television, and it seems that people that are getting wealthier, they just want more and more and more. And because I have a back problem, I get up in the middle of the night, and so I turn on one of these, like Jimmy Fallon or, you know, one of these things just to put me to sleep. And they had this Kim Kardashian. Now, I have never watched her program, and she was talking about her sister being 21 and a billionaire or something like that. And it was Jimmy Kimmel, and he said to her, then I guess you expect a really good Christmas present. And she said, I expect a really, really expensive present. And it just discourages me that our society, you know, when I grew up, people didn't have much. And my father was a lobbyist, and I grew up in a political family, and the Republicans and the Democrats and the Independents loved each other. You know, I mean, they respected each other. And now I'm just seeing a dichotomy occurring here, where what you're watching on the television, like what's happening in, what is it, Charlottesville, South Carolina, where was it where they had that terrible racist thing last week? And then I get in the car and I drive out in the streets and I don't see that. You know, so how do you explain this? I don't think this is happening.
Yes. My husband said, turn off the TV. Well, here's the thing, is that what you have to remember that what you're seeing on TV is meant to sell something.
Absolutely.
Basically, it's meant to sell.
Absolutely.
And if you look statistically, I did a TED Talk where I spoke about this, that bad news stories outweigh good 17 to 1. Now, that's not because, I believe anyway, it's not because there's more bad things happening. It's because bad news sells. It's because bad news sells, because if it bleeds, it leads, and that's what people think we want to hear. But somehow we've gotten things twisted up and we think that's the reality. So again, it goes back to being a possibilitarian and showing people that that is not the truth of who we are. And we have gotten off track, I would say, as a society, as a culture, where we start to think that it is all about the money. And that was my talk last week, talking about when we start using money and thinking that that is the end-all, be-all, that that's the reward, that's when we get off track. That really what we're here to do is what is in this circle, in these circles here, that we all have a basic drive. We all have a basic drive, number one, for autonomy. And what does that mean? That means to be who we came here to be, to be self-directed, to live our truth, to be true to ourselves. We all have that. My grandsons are just a year old. Let them figure out how to do something, and then you try and do it for them. Are they having it?
No.
No, they're not. No, they're not having it. Because they want to be independent. They want to be autonomous. They want to do it their way. And we all have that. We all have that. Now, it kind of gets squished down for some of us. We start thinking that it's more important what our families want us to do, or what the boss tells us to do, or what society tells us. You know, if $1 million is good, then, you know, billions are even better. Well, we're listening to things outside of us, not being true to who we are. So autonomy was the first thing. We all have a desire for mastery. And what does that mean? That means to find your gifts, to recognize your talents, your interests, and pursue them, and do them to the best of your ability. We all have that desire to be really good at something. That's the seed that's within us that's wanting to express, and we want to be able to do that to the best that we can. And it has nothing to do with money. In fact, if you watch the talk from last week, you'll see that throwing money into the mix can really muddy the water. And sometimes your expression, your productivity, your effectiveness will lessen because there's a financial reward attached to it.
What was
So,
the Wikipedia versus, what was the other one?
Yeah, it was Wikipedia versus, what was the other one? Like nobody remembers. Encarta. Right? Encarta.
And that was the point.
And that was the point. Exactly, right? That was the point, is that here was this business in Carta that had all the money behind it, it had all the experts, it was going to make a lot of money for Microsoft. Then you had this other business model, which was Wikipedia, that's completely volunteer driven, right? With people who were experts in their own thing, and which one took off?
Wikipedia.
Now, how many of you have used Wikipedia? Anybody using Carta in the last year? You couldn't have, because it disappeared after about 2 years. Didn't last. The last piece that is so very important is knowing your purpose. Is knowing that you are here for a reason. And it's not to buy a bigger car. It's not to have a nicer house.
For some people it is, but it's not always the right
Perhaps in the
quality.
moment.
Yes, yes.
Perhaps in the moment. Maybe it's a temporary goal. It's not purpose. Right? We all have goals. We all have goals. You want to have a nicer house. You want to lose weight. You want to have a better job. You want to have that eye candy on your arm. Some people have that as a goal. But that's not purpose. That's not purpose. That's not the same as using the gifts and the talents that you came into this world to give. Right. Our mission, I believe, is to find our gifts. Our purpose is to use them. Our purpose is to use them. So that was last week. Is there anything else? I know we've got a question, comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say is American man of color. We need to just stop it. And with the Republicans and the Democrats, blacks, whites, whoever you are, we're all Americans. And I am really frightened for our country and for myself. I've been very prosperous in this country. I lived a good life. We're afraid. I'm afraid of where we're going, and it's going to destroy us. And there's no reason for this. There's no reason that we shouldn't be where we are now. It's America. And we all need to just stop and think what we are doing to our country. Just stop it. Because nobody's going anywhere. What are we going to do? We're going to destroy ourselves?
Well, we're not going to do that. Grady wants to
Yeah.
comment. Go ahead.
So let's stop this.
Again, that's television and news media. Cindy and I had the opportunity to go to a wedding this summer, and I'll just talk about that. Jeff and Susan's son. Tell them what we experienced with that, and there were Germans, Jews, blacks, whites. But we had a different experience than what Estridge has witnessed on TV and what the national media would have you believe. What a beautiful time we had. And that everybody loved each other, everybody got along. That's the real world. And it's right there in front of us.
Right. And that's what we're here to show. Again, we are here to be the possibilitarians. We're not here to fall into the doom and gloom. This is an opportunity. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. We were all born for this time and this purpose. And if you're not seeing the light out there, it's for you to shine it.
Amen.
I don't know for how long. I'm not born and raised in Ocala. Y'all might have figured that out. New Yorker. And I can't tell you for how many years I would see things that happen. I would hear things, and I would be like, oh my God, what am I doing in this place? Where Spirit has a sense of humor. Yeah, it happened here. Even when my husband and I met each other, we're going back 30 years, and Grady's born and raised here. I'm from someplace completely different. And someone saw us in, what was it, we went out for lunch or something, and word got back in their little small community up in Reading that, what did they say, Grady was going out with the N-word?
The N-word, yeah.
Oh, they used the N-word. It got back to like everybody. You know, Grady was
Nice person.
That's it. I'll own that. I don't think that's what they meant, but it was okay. It is what it is. It is what it is. But we didn't let that stop us, did we? Yes.
And they didn't persist.
And they didn't persist. They didn't persist. They changed.
They just didn't know.
They
People
didn't
would hate each
know.
other less if they just knew we were all the same.
That's exactly right. Thank you for that. You can't hate people when you know their story.
We all believe the
And
same.
we all believe the same. Yes, we have one more comment and we've got to wrap it up on overtime.
As Bob Marley stated, until the color of a man's skin is judged as the color of his eyes, everywhere is war. Until we see the inner one in everything and everyone, unfortunately, this is something that's going to go on. We don't really have control of it, but if we can just see everyone as one that they are, then we can go on.
We are here to be the change.
Yes.
You may look at this and think we're a small little center in Ocala.
We're the ripple.
But it's part of a ripple effect, and I'm here to tell you that we are part of something much larger.
Yes.
Much larger. And we're being galvanized. We're being galvanized to step up and speak the truth. People are hungry to hear another message.
Mm-hmm.
They are hungry to know that things can be better. They are hungry to know that there are greater possibilities than what we're seeing on TV and the news and all the social media. And we can be that light. That's why we're here. When I wondered, what in the heck am I doing in this place? I should be in California, I should be someplace else, but not here. And someone actually said that to me. Someone said, the reason you are there is because that's where the light is needed.
Yes.
And that's the reason you have been planted wherever you are, because that's where the light needs to shine.